much for coming, and thank you so much for having us. I'm excited to be here today to share some current and emerging updates, and actually I feel like my presentation is a little bit more about some maybe forgotten diseases that we're starting to see again. So hopefully this will be informative for you. I have a packed schedule, so I think maybe you guys have heard about trichomoniasis in Fremont County, so we're going to start off with that since it's a big topic. We'll talk about some equine neurologic cases, avian influenza virus. I wish I could tell you that's old news, but it keeps coming back. It's not old news. We'll talk a little bit about the NPIP program, that's a poultry program, and just some quick updates about neurologic sheep and scrapie sampling, show animal ID, and an animal disease traceability update. So we can't give a presentation without talking about brucellosis in Wyoming, so that's also on the list. We'll see how far I get, and I'll leave time for questions. So if we need to cut a couple topics out, we'll do that. So I think I'll plan to kind of roll through the presentation, save your questions to the end, and I'm also happy to chat with you on the side if you have anything you want to talk about after the presentation. So update on trichomoniasis. I feel like we cannot talk about this disease unless we talk about where we've been. So let's not pick on Fremont County. Let's pick on southwestern Wyoming. So this is a historical slide. Back in 2000, we had a lot of issues with trich from 2000 to 2010. And what you can see, this map is a little hard to see. It's a Google Earth map. But just look at where those pinpoints are on the slide. So just these little dots everywhere. That is approximate locations of trich positive bulls in this period from 2007 to 2012. That's a lot of trich. And when we look at our testing data over the years, what you can see is late 90s, early 2000s, our trich testing numbers were kind of low. And we probably weren't doing as good of a job as we could have been doing trying to identify the disease. But for the past 10 years, our numbers look excellent. We've consistently tested over 10,000 bulls a year in Wyoming. And this is thanks to you guys, to you ranchers who are putting disease detection a priority in your management, and also to your veterinarians who are doing a lot of that hard work. And with that increased testing, we've seen a decrease in the number of cases. So again, back in 2012, 2013, we have the number of positive bulls here in blue, the number of positive herds here in orange, and the number of positive counties in gray. And you can see that back in 2012, 2013, we had about 50 positive bulls in the state, about 18 affected herds, somewhere around 5 affected counties, and these numbers have dropped steadily every year. In fact, trich was undetectable in Wyoming for 5 years. And that is fantastic. But you can see there's a red arrow there, 2022 to 2024, it started to rear its ugly head again. So in 2022, we had 1 positive bull identified in Carbon County. We had 4 additional potentially affected herds that were tested, and we did not find any additional trich. So we thought, good. Single isolated case, don't know where it came from, but we got it. And then in January of 2024, we identified a case in Fremont County. We do not provide the exact locations of where these bulls are found, but what I will tell you, and I don't need to tell you, you guys know this. In this area, Sweetwater, southern Fremont, southern Natrona, northern Carbon, is big country. It's rough country. Cattle do not get 100% gathered after turnout in the spring. Kind of these basic things that we all know, right? All cows have 4 legs, and it's amazing how far they can go. So we at the Livestock Board are just a little concerned that something out there is simmering, potentially. So currently, with this situation, we have about 20 potential impact to affected herds. The epidemiology, tracebacks, and interviews have already been done. And so right now the testing is ongoing and those test numbers are rolling in as we speak. They change every day. I can tell you that I've already been able to release 1 quarantine, which is great. So This will be ongoing through the spring. So far, we have not identified any additional positive bulls yet, but the testing's not complete either. So we just really cannot get lax with trick. When we look at a heat map of where trick is in the US, I think this is a really nice map. If you notice the dark blue states, those are states that have over 200 positive trick cases in a 5-year period, 2015 to 2019. And trick identification is correlated with the number of cattle in a state. So California, Texas, Florida, Missouri, these are really big cattle states. Wyoming, we're a little bit lower on the list, but we're also not clean. What you can see is that the very lightest blue color in this map are the clean states. The gray color are the states that actually didn't report anything. So just as a reminder, cattle move a lot. We move cattle across state lines all the time. Thousands and thousands of head a day, right, on trucks going different directions. And they also move for seasonal grazing, and we have a lot of that in Wyoming. So in 2022, just to kind of hit home on this point, there was a couple outbreaks in Utah. And in April of 2022, there were 3 positive trick herds that were identified in Box Elder County. That's where that red arrow shows up there on the map. But actually, those bulls grazed on a grazing association in southern Idaho, with potential exposure to 9 additional herds. And then we had another outbreak in Utah that was in Summit County, 2 separate herds, and they were part of a grazing association in Webb County. So how we graze our cattle, how we manage our cattle, and where they're going is really important with trick. And you can see how close this is to the Wyoming line. So, just a little bit of background for you on trick. It is a venereal disease, and it's caused by a protozoan. So not a bacteria, not a virus, a protozoan. And this protozoa doesn't actually infect the body. I'll talk about this in a second, but it kind of affects the periphery of the body, so it's really hard to make a good vaccine for it. And this is a reportable disease in Wyoming. So everybody in the room, veterinarian, rancher, anybody, if you have suspicion of trick or you know of a trick case, get on the phone, call the state vet's office, and it's actually required by the Livestock Board rules that you do so. So reportable diseases are reportable for a couple reasons. The disease could affect people. The disease maybe has a huge economic impact, or it has a huge animal health impact. And this one has a huge economic impact, and we'll talk about that. So I did not make this slide. I can't take credit. I think it's great. My coworker, assistant state vet, Dr. DeGian Antonio, actually created all this. So I had to borrow it for today's presentation. Trick spreads from an infected bull. So an infected bull breeds a negative cow, gets that negative cow infected, and that cow actually becomes infected within 7 to 14 days. One service from an infected bull to a negative cow causes a 95% infectivity rate. So this is a really infectious disease. Now we have an infected cow. That infected cow gets bred by a different bull that was negative and infects that bull. So you can see how trick can spread pretty quick. This slide is, I'm sorry, it's a little hard to see maybe from the back, but this is the male reproductive tract in a bull, and trick affects just the shaft of the penis. So it doesn't, get all the way throughout the body. Same with a cow. This is the reproductive tract of a cow, and it just affects the front of the cervix here. So again, not the whole body. And trick is a silent disease. We really don't see clinical signs. Bulls, you have to test them to identify if they're trick positive. And once they are positive, they become carriers for life. So one positive test condemns that bull. Cows oftentimes also have no obvious signs, even though things are going on internally with the reproductive tract. So with cows, they will often abort very early. We call that early embryonic loss. So when that fetus is very small, at 30 or 60 days, you will not see an aborted full-term calf out in your pasture. That fetus is just absorbed in the reproductive tract. But they get a lot of inflammation in the uterus. So that whole tract is not happy for a breeding back type of situation. And so they can have irregular estrus cycles, and they will eventually clear the infection. It takes about 4 months. So the actual signs in your herd, you won't see the actual impacts of the disease on individual animals. We'll oftentimes notice this when it's a little bit too late, when we've had trick in the herd. And when we have that early embryonic loss, that cow or heifer will go back into heat. She may not conceive if there's still too much inflammation to support a pregnancy. So you'll see a lower preg rate in your herd and a smaller calf crop. Or she may get bred late, but that really can increase your calving interval, and you'll have a less uniform calf crop. So when we talk about the significance of that economic impact, we see a lot of different things. We see decreased calf crop, decreased weaning weight, increased open and cull numbers for replacements, increased culling of your infected bulls, and then of course genetic losses if you're having to cull all these animals. So it's hard to put a dollar sign on, one ranch to another ranch to another ranch, because a lot of it depends on management. So how long is your breeding season? Are you breeding in a 60-acre pasture or a 6,000-acre pasture? What's your bull to cow ratio? There's so many factors that can affect this. But there was a study that looked at a simulated model, and it estimated a 14% to 50% decreased calf crop. And you can probably hear the money falling out of your bank account when I say that. So let's talk about preventing trick. The first thing to do is limit exposure. So test your bulls. Test your bulls in the fall when you pull them off, or in the spring before you turn them out. And turn over your bull population. Those older bulls get really deep crevices in their penis, and what that does is that it helps hold that trick organism inside. Those bulls can potentially, let's just say that those older bulls can harbor disease more than younger bulls. And so if you use virgin bulls and younger bulls, they have less disease, they've been exposed to less cows. Consider using virgin heifers as well as your replacements, so that you're not buying open cows with unknown disease status and turning them out into your herd. And then limit your consequences of exposure. So limit the time a potentially infected bull is with your cows. You could breed your cows prior to turnout. May work for some management systems, may not work for others. Limit your breeding season. Keep it short, 60 to 90 days. And print check and cull your open and your late cows. So just a reminder about Wyoming's trick program. There are 3 times when a test is absolutely required in Wyoming. So the first is common grazing. If you're turning out bulls on common grazing, they have to be tested prior to turnout. And those results have to be at the Livestock Board office prior to turnout. If that bull is changing ownership for sale or for lease, that bull has to be trick tested before a brand inspection is provided and before that bull is delivered to the new owner. And if you're selling a bull and you want that bull to go back to the country to breed and you're hauling him to a livestock market, he better come to the market with a current trick test. And a current trick test is within 2 weeks of arrival at the market. If the bull does not have a trick passport, he goes to slaughter, or to a feedlot and then to slaughter. He cannot go back to the country. The next topic I wanted to talk to you about today was neurologic horses in Wyoming. I don't know if some of you heard about the interesting and concerning cases we had last year, but actually Fremont County was significantly impacted by this. So what happened was the first week of August in 2023, we had reports of 9 cases of neurologic horses in Wyoming. And that's a lot in 1 week. So we had 6 reports in Fremont County, 2 in Park, and 1 in Bighorn. And we did not have test results yet on these horses. So vets were just calling and saying, hey, I have this down horse. Hey, I just saw another down horse. Another vet would call and say, hey, I have a weak wobbly horse. Have you guys been seeing anything? So this quickly became a topic of concern at the state level. The reason is that a lot of neurologic horse diseases can look similar. And some of them have some pretty significant impacts. So like rabies, for example, is contagious to humans. So that's really concerning. We are concerned about what we call the viral encephalitis diseases, or the diseases that cause brain swelling, and that's Eastern equine encephalitis, Western equine encephalitis, and West Nile. We were concerned about EPM, but that's not really common here. That's common where possums live, so like back in Tennessee area, much more common. Have you guys heard about equine herpes virus? Highly contagious. Oftentimes we'll see outbreaks that occur at cutting or roping a show, and then those horses will disseminate back to their home states and find out that they were exposed to herpes virus. So that was also on our list. So we, at the livestock board level, got involved pretty quickly because we were also concerned, do we have a new disease or something else going on that we don't know about? And so we wanted these horses to have consistent tests across the board to make sure that we identify anything that we were concerned about, and also track some history. Did they have a common travel history to a show, for example? So these horses all presented very similar. They were weak in the hind end, or they were down, and they were unable to rise. There was no common history of travel, and all these horses had minimal to no vaccination status. And when I use that term, I'm talking about Eastern, Western, West Nile, tetanus, rabies. Maybe they have one vaccination as a colt or a yearling, but that doesn't provide immunity for life. The other commonality that we had last summer is a lot of moisture. You guys experienced that? A lot of bugs. And this was a headline from Cowboy State Daily comparing Cheyenne to Seattle. Pretty drastic, but significant comparison there. While we were dealing with these horses, Wyoming Department of Health put out a notice about their tests coming back positive for West Nile virus in mosquitoes. So they were seeing increased West Nile virus positive mosquitoes, and they were concerned about people getting sick. And sure enough, 60% of our cases that were reported to the livestock board were West Nile virus. You can see Fremont County there with the yellow arrow. We had 18 cases that were reported to us, and 8 of those were West Nile virus positive. So there's a great vaccine for this disease, right? Why were we suddenly seeing this big peak? Well, West Nile virus, kind of like trick, we haven't seen it for a while, we start to kind of forget about it if it's not in our face. I thought this headline was very fitting. Is West Nile virus a forgotten disease in North America? It seemed to be potentially here in our state last year. So West Nile virus is actually the reservoir's birds, and the birds make tons and tons of virus, and the mosquitoes bite these positive birds, and then they go and they bite people, or they bite horses, and that is how people and horses get West Nile. Horses do not spread West Nile from horse to horse, and people don't spread West Nile from person to person. And when we talk about what does a West Nile virus horse look like, well, remember it can look like those other diseases too. And it really depends on the severity of the case. So how much brain swelling does that horse have? In mild cases, they'll just have some muscle tremors, sometimes facial twitching, incoordination, stumbling, a little weak. Maybe you can appreciate that horse looks kind of weak in his hind end. These horses that are up, they're not perfect, but they're able to ambulate around and move and eat. They usually recover from West Nile. When these horses have a lot of brain swelling, they go down. They can't get up. They have impaired vision. They convulse. And those cases usually result in death. West Nile virus has a 33% fatality rate in unvaccinated horses. So if you see any of the signs of West Nile, call your vet. Like I said, many diseases can look similar, so testing is required to help determine what the cause of illness really is. And there is no cure for West Nile. So we treat this disease with supportive care, fluids, anti-inflammatories, those sorts of things. I'm just going to mention Eastern encephalitis virus because it has some similarities to West Nile, and it has been moving our direction, which is alarming to us. Eastern encephalitis virus is different from West Nile because it is so much more severe. These horses are normal one day and they are dead in 2 days. The fatality rate is 90%. So I just want you to keep it on your radar if you're a horse owner about the importance of vaccination for this disease. because this is a heat map from 2019. And what you can see is, yes, it mostly affects the eastern United States. But Minnesota is getting into the Midwest, and Texas is a little far from the East Coast. And actually, this map is not perfectly up to date. I did some additional searching and found that Arizona had a case in 2023. And Montana had a case in a human, and that was in 2019. So you just saw this picture, right? Eastern is spread just like West Nile. So birds, but we can actually have rodents with the birds, and then the mosquito, and then to the horse and human. So prevention is key for these diseases. Vaccinate, vaccinate. I'm not sure if I can say that enough, just because we've had so many lapsed vaccinations in our area. But administer a vaccine in the spring so that your horse has full immunity by the time mosquitoes come out. Now, the mosquitoes that carry these diseases are kind of specific. So for West Nile, they come out at the end of summer. They come out in August. So make sure that you administer those vaccines early before mosquito season and follow the manufacturer's instructions. If your horse hasn't had a booster for a while, probably needs a booster that first year. Please reach out to your veterinarian with any questions about vaccination or vaccine recommendations. I have some examples up here of vaccines, but you can vaccinate for everything in one shot. So Eastern, Western, West Nile, tetanus, herpes virus, all in one. The rabies is the one vaccine that has to be given by a veterinarian. The other thing that's critical is to eliminate any places where mosquitoes are breeding on your place. And unless you're really looking for these, they may not be obvious. So tires, we all have old tires around our place. Or maybe I'm giving you a tip about how junky my place is. But regardless, tires trap water and that becomes a quick mosquito breeding ground, as do things like bird baths or buckets that you have laying around, or the wheelbarrow, thunderstorms and your wheelbarrow gets some water in it. So make sure you take care of all those little areas where standing water could be present. And then reduce the risk of your horse having the chance of getting bitten by a positive mosquito. So use fly spray, but make sure it's labeled for mosquitoes. You can use fans to help deter mosquitoes. Bring your horses into barns, especially dawn and dusk, when mosquitoes are the most active with their feeding. And consider using screens. If you have a really valuable horse, put up some screens in your barn to keep those mosquitoes out. The next topic I have is avian influenza. And this is a topic that you guys are like, oh my gosh, why do we keep talking about this? I wish I didn't have to be honest. When people ask, well, how do I know if my bird has avian influenza? I'm sorry, because this is a sad picture, but usually this is what we see, dead birds. And like normal the night before and dead in 12 hours. It's really fast. If they're still alive, you might appreciate some swelling on the comb, swelling around the eyes. They'll be really listless, just sitting there, droopy head, not moving. And we are still in the biggest avian influenza outbreak in US history. I'm sorry because that click here for international exports, I could not get that to go away. But that number, so anything that's dark green on this heat map, that's 18.1 million birds. That's Iowa. And you can appreciate that Wyoming is green. We have not been spared from avian influenza. When we look at the entire United States, just to give you an idea, we have 81.8 million birds affected. Now, Wyoming is not a commercial poultry state. So we don't talk about this probably like other states do that are raising broilers and turkeys and massive barns. But people have backyard chickens. And what I've really come to appreciate is how much people like their chickens and how devastating this can be to go out and see your 50 chickens dead. And you can see how fast it happens. The 81.8 million, those are deaths both because of direct infection from the virus, but also because some birds are euthanized to curb spread. So in Wyoming, my update actually is the same as last year because we haven't had an official detection since last year of 2023. We've had 11 flocks affected, they're all backyard flocks, and 430 birds affected. How does it spread? This is spread by migratory waterfowl primarily. So think Canada geese or ducks. I used to see the V's in the sky and be like, oh, that's so pretty. And now I see that and I'm like, ah, they're spreading virus everywhere. So literally these birds will fly over your place, they will defecate as they're flying, and that poop is loaded with virus. And then we turn out our chickens to free range, right, on our pastures, and they come across this virus-infected feces and they all die. So when we look at wild bird detections, this slide's actually a little bit behind. So we've had 163 detections in wild birds since January 1st of 2022. But I will tell you that across my desk, just in the past couple weeks, Canada geese and other species, ducks, other things. So we have positive birds in our state now. And why I'm bringing this up is because migration season is around the corner, right? And these birds are going to fly from the south straight up across our state. And they love to fly right over Fremont County, because it's a kind of a flyway right along the mountains. So keep your birds safe is the real message here. I'll give you a couple tips, and then I'll give you a great website to go to if you want more information. So keeping my birds safe, great, there's like these wild birds flying around everywhere. How am I going to do that? Good question. It's not easy. You need to make sure that your birds don't have contact with wild waterfowl. So if you're free ranging and you have a pond or an irrigation ditch on your place that attracts birds, keep your chickens away from that. Fence them in. Put a roof over the chicken house so that if those birds fly over and defecate, it doesn't go into your chicken house. Cover your feed bins so that you're not attracting wild birds to your chicken feed. And if you visit a premise, someone else has chickens, you go pet their chickens and say hi. Do not come back and immediately go pet your chickens. That could be a direct transmission for disease. So instead, go home, take a shower, disinfect your shoes, wash your hands, and then go pet your chickens. Minimize visitors also coming in and petting your chickens, because you don't want other people to bring disease in. And this Defend the Flock website that USDA has put together is excellent. So if you guys are chicken enthusiasts or know other people who are, please share this website with them. There's lots of ideas on how to keep your poultry safe. The biggest, best news I have about this devastating disease is that we have changed our response. USDA changed the way that we have to respond as a state to this disease. So in the past, people would call me and say, half my chickens are dead. And I'd say, okay, you probably have avian influenza, we need to come test, and then I would have to euthanize the rest of the chickens. We do not have to do that anymore, and I want to say that loud and clear. I do not have to go euthanize your chickens. If you call me and you say half my chickens are dead, I can say, all right, we can test them for avian influenza, I can help you with your biosecurity, I can help you try to manage this disease, but those strong chickens that actually maybe survived or would survive can stay on your place. So feel free to call me, and don't be scared that I'll show up in a white Tyvek scary suit. I just want to mention the National Poultry Improvement Plan. Has anyone heard of that? Show of hands. Poultry people in here? Yay! Not so many poultry people in here. Well, this is a program that's voluntary, but chickens have actually really picked up popularity in our state, so this is why I'm talking about it. And there's a lot of people who raise like fancy chickens, beautiful chickens, and they want to sell those eggs or the breeding stock across state lines. And it's a lot easier to do if you're part of NPIP. Because if you're part of this program, you're already testing for disease, and so it's a lot easier for you to say, ship those birds to Nebraska, Colorado, wherever you want to ship them. So we do have a program, and if you're interested in either testing your birds, becoming part of that program, or you love chickens and you want to be a certified poultry testing agent for the program, come talk to me. I'd love to chat with you about that. And we do assist with costs and things like that for this. My presentation is not just about neurologic animals. This is also another sad picture. But Wyoming has to have a scrapie surveillance program. We're required, and we actually have a big sheep industry in our state. The issue is that a lot of those sheep go to other states for slaughter. So we do not get credit for all those samples, and so we're way down on our sample numbers. If you guys raise sheep and you have a neurologic sheep, please first call your veterinarian, get an assessment, see if you can treat your sheep and turn them around. If you can't, and it's looking like that sheep needs to be euthanized, will you call us, please? Because we will test that sheep for free, for scrapie for you, so that you will have those results. And then that also helps bolster our program that we're mandatorily supposed to have. So it's great for both parties and no charge to you. I want to talk a little bit about show livestock because show season is coming up. So official ID is required for show livestock. And official ID, the Livestock Board is really promoting putting an official ID tag in. It is actually the breeder's responsibility to put this tag in. So piglets, any show steers, and lambs, sheep, and goats can get an 840 tag. So this tag, I have a better picture, and I'll show you on that picture. But on this little button here, there's a really long string of numbers that you cannot read, but it starts with 840. And that indicates that this is an official tag. There's also a US shield on that tag. And if you're gonna show and you need to cross state lines, you need an official ID anyways to get across the state lines. So make sure that your animal's tagged before you buy it. If it's too late, it's okay. Talk to your extension agent and they'll help get you a tag. Now for sheep and goats, a scrapie tag is also official ID. And so that is what is here, shown here. And then this sheep is tagged with an 840 tag. So a lot of the fair tags, so like the fair tags that are being given out, those are 900 series tags. And I actually talked about this on another slide. But 900 series tags, they don't start with 840, they start with 900. Those are not official ID. Now they're read with the same scanner, and that can be really confusing. So if you tag with a 900 series tag, that doesn't get you across state lines. So it's best just to skip the 900 and go straight to the 840. Get an official ID, covers all your bases. And actually, this is the slide where we talk about ear tags. Can you see the 840 right here? 840, US Shield, to confirm that's an official tag. Quick update on the animal disease traceability rule. So this was about the use of electronic ID in cattle and bison. And the rule proposed that official ear tags for interstate movement for bison and cattle must be both electronically and visibly read. The only change from what was required previously is that now it has to be electronically and visibly read, whereas before it was okay to just have it be visibly read. The Livestock Board encourages the use of RFID tags. We try to provide those to producers as needed. We provide electronic banks tags to your veterinarians for free at no charge. They are so much easier to read. I do a lot of herd testing, and I can tell you, when I'm trying to read those metal tags, and I'm like, A3, ALM. I'm like, okay, I got half of it. You have to go back in for the rest, right? And with these, I have a scanner, and I just wave it over the head. 16-digit number shows up just like that. I download it on a computer. There's no misreading. Have you guys ever tried to read metal tags with horns? Yeah, so there's like 3 numbers that you're never going to be able to read because they're rubbed off from the horns. So just a lot of challenges with metal tags that RFIDs really help with. So this rule, where are we at? So there's a comment period, and people could supply comments, and that comment period is over. So they've been going through the comments. The rule is with OIG, so Office of Inspector General. Sounds like a black box to me. I think it can sit there for a long time as they write it and rewrite it, and we do not have any other updates aside from that. So. Last topic, like I said, it would not be a thorough talk if I didn't cover brucellosis. So let's just talk about some brucellosis basics really quick. You guys probably know this. You live pretty close to the DSA. Fremont County, part of Fremont County is in the DSA. So the US is classified as brucellosis free. But we have a small pocket that involves Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana in the greater Yellowstone area where we have positive elk. And the positive elk will occasionally transmit brucellosis to cattle. So, okay, why are we so worried about this? Well, we're worried for 3 reasons. Brucellosis is zoonotic, so people can get it, and it's bad. If you don't know that you were exposed and you don't seek treatment right away, it can end up in joint infections and organ infections and organ failure. So it's not a good disease. Brucellosis causes abortions in weak calves, and it's a disease of trade significance. No one else has it in the US, and let me tell you, they don't want it. So we have, as you know, in Wyoming, a designated surveillance area, which is kind of outlined here in that dark red color. It involves all or parts of 6 counties. And that is where there are special requirements because of the numbers of positive elk. There's special requirements for testing cattle leaving that area. So over 1 year of age, female intact, have to be bled and tested for brucellosis. You have to have those results before you move out of the DSA. And this is the Livestock Board rule. So because nobody else wants brucellosis, and it's a disease of trade significance, it is our responsibility, all of Wyoming, to manage this disease and make sure that we meet the federal requirements and help maintain our negative status. So if we find it, we can find it, but we have to take care of it right away. And this allows us to maintain our export status. Wyoming is an export state, right? Cow-calf, primarily. Our calves go elsewhere. Texas, Nebraska, Kansas. They do not stay in Wyoming to get fed. We also export breeding animals, too. And so if we lose the opportunities to ship our cattle out of state, we've lost our markets, and that can really affect our industry. So why I'm explaining this is because we have certain things that we have to do as a state to maintain this status. And the first is that we require bangs vaccination statewide. There's only a handful of states that require bangs vaccination anymore, because it's not an issue anywhere else. But if you have cattle in Wyoming, your females need to be bangs vaccinated, preferably before a year of age. That's really the requirement. If you acquire a non-vaccinated cow that's older, we can work with you and get her vaccinated. The vaccine does cause abortion, which is why you vaccinate them when they're young, or you vaccinate them right after they calve, if they're older. The DSA, like I said, has specific testing requirements. And then I also want to mention slaughter plant samples, because Wyoming as a state has to test across the state. But the designated surveillance area is the only one that's required to test cattle as they move out of the DSA. And so in order to capture those other samples to make everybody happy, a really easy way to do that is to test at slaughter plants. So hold on. Yes, we're testing animals, and people will say, oh my gosh, like you're testing my meat for stuff? I actually worked in slaughter plants for 3 years, and let me tell you, meat is tested for all sorts of things. Veterinarians look at it for pathology, tumors, cancer eye, TB. You want to make sure there's no E. coli in that meat, salmonella. So meat is actually tested for all sorts of stuff. Adding on brucellosis, not a big deal. They just catch a blood sample at time of slaughter, and this is really good surveillance. So we find cases early this way before they can significantly spread in the herd, before they cause any issues. So please, if you guys are hauling fats, cold cows, anything to slaughter plants, whether that's a custom plant, state inspected, federally inspected, ask them, do you brucellosis test? Make sure I want my cow tested, or I want my steer tested. We actually test all sexes at slaughter plants. Those numbers are extremely valuable, and we need your help to promote the slaughter plant testing. Slaughter plants do get paid to do this. It's not a whole lot. We're trying to get a raise in the near future, hopefully by July. It's $3.50 a sample, I think they get. So it's not a ton, but at least there's a bit of incentive there. So for the final brucellosis update, did you guys hear about the brucellosis in Sweetwater County? Yes? No? No? Wow, okay, so brucellosis was found outside the DSA end of last summer. This past summer. That was a huge deal, because usually we find brucellosis inside our designated surveillance area, and it had gotten out. So that, I just wanted to confirm that that case is resolved. All of the tracebacks have been completed. Almost all this herd testing has been completed. Over 4,000 head was tested as a traceback from people that had bought and sold from that positive herd. Just about everything's been resolved in that case, and we found no additional cases, which is great news. Also, there's been increased elk surveillance in that area, in Sweetwater County. So far, I haven't heard of anything coming back positive on that. We do have several herds under quarantine. So we have 2 in Park County and 1 in Fremont County. And just to clarify, Fremont County does have ties to the DSA. So that's why it's quarantined here. And I just want to thank you guys. Like if you're helping, assisting with any and all the surveillance, thank you so much. It takes time, it takes effort, and that's what's keeping our cattle industry going in Wyoming. So thank you very much. If any of these topics were interesting to you and you're interested in getting email updates about them, please consider signing up for our email service. It's called Gov Delivery. So if you go to our website, you'll come up on the board page. So you'll have to kind of navigate over to animal health. And then this right here, if you click on that Gov Delivery button, you can sign up, and you can sign up for just specific topics, like maybe you only want to hear about pigs. No problem, sign up for pigs. Or press releases, so you can target your emails. We don't send tons, we won't fill up your inbox, but some of these things it's really nice to be aware of, especially things like the neurologic horses. We were sending those out to veterinarians and also notices out to horse owners. So they were had signed up for Gov Delivery. So I hope I'm doing okay on time. Thank you guys so much for coming. What questions can I answer?